What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Terence Bud Crawford. He was called out today by undefeated, rising welterweight superstar title contender Jaron Boots Ennis. Jaron Boots Ennis, he was on FaceTime with undefeated, unified WBC, IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer who is widely considered to be top 3 pound-for-pound fighters in the world, in Earl the Truth Spence Jr. And immediately following that, as he was on entertainer from Philadelphia, Gilly the Kid's live stream, he stated they called out Bud Crawford. We 27-0, 25 knockouts. We only 23 years of age, but you saw what we did with former world champion Sergey Lipinets in the last fight. Now, Jaron Boots Ennis, he's like a younger, bigger version of Terence Crawford. Jaron Boots Ennis, he stands at 5'10" with a 74-inch arm reach, but he's only 23 years of age. Terence Crawford is 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. Their similarities is that Jaron Boots Ennis, he switches from orthodox to southpaw fluidly, just like one Terence Bud Crawford. And now he's calling out Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is undefeated, 37 wins, no losses, 28 wins by way of knockout. He's 33 years of age. He'll be 34 in September. Last time we saw Terence Crawford in the ring was November 14th when he knocked out former IBF welterweight world champion, British superstar boxer Special K, Kell Brook, in dramatic fashion. With that said, Terence Crawford, he had to make an adjustment in that fight because Kell Brooks, his jab was having much success, and he was out jabbing Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, he then switched to southpaw because he started the fight off in the orthodox stance. And Kell Brook was having a lot of success with his jab. He was actually outboxing and out jabbing Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, he switched to southpaw, and we know the rest is history. So with that said, this would be a huge fight. Obviously, the super fight in the sport of boxing is Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence, he responded to Boots Ennis in the same video, and he says, "Big dogs, they don't respond to pups. Your time is coming." So now, Jaron Ennis, he stated that former unified WBC, WBA welterweight world champion superstar boxer Keith One-Time Thurman would be the perfect litmus test to allow himself to be catapulted in the same conversation as Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, and one 2-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Shawn Porter. With that said, Shawn Porter, he likened Jaron Boots Ennis to one former multi-division world champion, legendary, iconic, Hall of Fame superstar boxer Roy Jones Jr. There's a lot of similarities physically, right? Roy Jones, 5'11", 74-inch arm reach. Jaron Ennis, 5'10", 74-inch arm reach. They're both athletic. But with that said, Roy Jones, he was an anomaly in the sport of boxing. Roy Jones, he put on performances and displays that's never been witnessed in the sport of boxing. He threw combinations. He did a lot of things that just hadn't been seen and done in the sport of boxing in a boxing ring. With that said, you had legendary, late great trainer and colorful analyst Emmanuel Stewart. He says Roy Jones you would never teach anything Roy Jones does inside the ring, inside the gyms. But Roy Jones, his reflexes and his athletic ability is so off the charts. He's such an anomaly. He gets away with a lot of things. Now, I don't see that from Jaron Boots Ennis, but I definitely see greatness from Jaron Boots Ennis. I definitely see that Jaron Boots Ennis, his ceiling is unlimited. So with that said, he's calling for a fight with Terence Crawford. And he says the best way to do it is to do is to go through one Keith Thurman. So Keith Thurman is 29 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 22 wins by way of knockout. Keith Thurman is 32 years of age. Keith Thurman is 5'7.5" with a 69-inch arm reach. And the last time we saw Keith Thurman in the ring was about 2 years ago. We're going on 2 years when he fought 8th division legendary iconic Filipino superstar boxer Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. So Jaron Boots Ennis, he says the way he can make himself undoubtedly a viable option for these guys to fight and put himself in position where he can't be denied is to go through Keith Thurman. He says, if I make a statement out of Keith Thurman, he says then it will be very, very difficult for these guys to turn me down. Well, Sean Porter, like I said, he likened Jaron Ennis to that of Roy Jones Jr. And Sean Porter, he stated he's never getting in the ring with Jaron Ennis. He said that's not going to happen. He says, obviously, Sean Porter has bigger accomplishments in his sights. He's the WBO #1 mandatory challenger for Terence Crawford. He's also the WBC #1 mandatory challenger in a highly anticipated rematch of their September 28th, 2019 showdown between him and Errol Spence Jr. So Sean Porter, he says that he's not getting in the ring with Jaron Boots Ennis. He says he has no motivation to do so. He says he was motivated by watching Jaron Ennis fight. He said he went out and he pounded the pavement. He went and jogged. He ran. He says, because I see these guys, they're mentioning my name, and we just never know. So he didn't completely close the door, but he said it's highly unlikely that he steps in the ring with these guys, mainly Jaron Boots Ennis. So with that said, everybody wants to see Jaron Ennis in step-up fights. Jaron Ennis has another opponent that he could possibly make some noise with and make a statement out of, and that's one Igis Kavalauskas. Igis Kavalauskas is an opponent of Terence Crawford, and Igis Kavalauskas, well, he gave Terence Crawford a tougher fight than most people expected. Not many people expected the tough fight that Terence Crawford had with Igis Kavalauskas, okay? Igis Kavalauskas, he unofficially dropped Terence Crawford in the fight. It wasn't ruled a knockdown, but it should have been, but it wasn't, okay? And, you know, he had a lot of success against Terence Crawford. Now, it also played a part in the fighting style of Terence Crawford, the manner in which Terence Crawford chose to fight the fight. He chose to fight in the inside, in the pocket. He chose to, you know, just slug it out with Igis Kavalauskas. Igis Kavalauskas, 22 wins, 1 loss. That coming at the hands of Terence Crawford. He eventually got stopped. He has 1 draw on his resume. That comes to one Ray Robinson. And he's 18 wins by way of knockout, okay? He stands at 5'9" with a 71-inch arm reach. He himself is 32 years of age. So he's a big guy, okay? He will present a very, very tough test for one Jaron Boots Ennis. He looked impressive in his last fight. That was September 2020 when he stopped Mikhail Zawitsky in very impressive fashion, okay? Also, another opponent. Now, that I believe Igis Kavalauskas would be the perfect opponent for Jaron Ennis to make a statement out of if he truly wants to go the route of fighting Terence Crawford. Now, one thing is interesting because you think Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, they've been going back and forth in social media, things of that nature. When Errol Spence, he said, I'm the bigger draw, 60-40 split in my favor, let's make it happen. He's done 3 pay-per-views, one in which he fought 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia that did 350,000 pay-per-views. He then fought 2-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter. That did a reported 325,000 pay-per-views. And then his most recent fight, he fought against Danny Swift Garcia, fellow Philly native of Jaron Boots Ennis. And was Jaron Boots Ennis, he's seeking to, you know, avenge that loss for Danny Swift Garcia to Errol Spence. Danny Garcia is a 2-division world champion, former junior welterweight, unified world champion, former WBC welterweight world champion. And that did a reported 310,000 pay-per-views. Well, Terence Crawford, a combined 2 pay-per-views with Victor Postile and with Amir King Kong, multi-division world champion, in which it did a combined 210,000 pay-per-views, 60,000 for the Victor Postile fight, and 150,000 for the Amir Khan fight. So it's a combined 210,000 pay-per-views. So with that said, Errol Spence says, I'm the biggest star, I'm the bigger draw. And Errol Spence in 2020 did the biggest gate of any boxer in 2020, including Canelo Alvarez, 4-division world champion, Mexican superstar boxer, and also Gervonta Tank Davis, undefeated 2-division world champion. So he did bigger gates, live gates, than both of those guys, proving that he's the biggest star than Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford won't bend to it. He won't succumb to it. So with that said, Terence Crawford, he responded by saying the Errol Spence fight is in his rearview mirror. He don't want to make it happen. It's done. He don't think about it. He don't want to talk about it. He don't want to negotiate. It's over. He was even asked, what about a 50-50 split that you asked for? He said, I don't think that's going to get done. I think that fight is behind me. So it's interesting if Jaron Boots Ennis, saying that to say, leading up to what my point is, Jaron Boots Ennis, he fights Igor Kavalauskas, makes a statement out of Igor Kavalauskas, works his way into the picture with Terence Crawford, okay? Igor Kavalauskas is a former foe of Terence Crawford that gave him a tough fight, okay? Probably the toughest fight he's had since he's been at welterweight. So with that said, if he goes and he beats Igor Kavalauskas, starts to make a name for himself, looks to get into a fight in a position to fight Terence Crawford, well then he can replace Terence Crawford should he beat Terence Crawford, get the WBO belt, as the biggest fight in the sport of boxing between himself and Errol Spence Jr. Now, Errol Spence Jr., he's going into a unification bout against Cuban star boxer who was elevated to the WBA super champion after Manny Pacquiao. He was relieved of his belt after he defeated Keith Thurman due to inactivity, which the WBA, they elevated Yordenis Ugas. So with that said, now you could get Errol Spence is on the verge of fighting Yordenis Ugas for that belt. 3 belts to be on the line: WBC, IBF, and the WBA. He captures that belt from Yordenis Ugas, and Jaron Ennis is somehow able to put himself in position to fight Terence Bud Crawford. Well, then, if he beats Terence Crawford, then that makes Jaron Boots Ennis and Errol Spence the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. So there's ways that Jaron Ennis can place himself in position. He's also can place himself in position to fight the #1 IBF challenger and beat him, and then he would be Errol Spence mandatory. So there's definitely ways. Obviously, Errol Spence, after this Yordenis Ugas fight, he's looking to fight Terence Crawford because he said he wants to be undisputed before he exits the division and go to 154 junior middleweight. But Jaron Ennis, he also stated that eventually he's going to make his way to 154. So the showdown for him and Errol Spence is possibly at 154. But as far as Terence Crawford, he can start making some noise and rattling some feathers and causing some waves. Terence Crawford, he'll answer the bell. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But I believe that right now, Jaron Ennis physically is prepared to face off against Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, but experience and mentally, I don't know if he's ready to be there under those big lights with those guys. They've been there before. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Raw. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.